program is the Active Center.
When your team wins the World Series, you see it all, right? The champagne showers, the giant trophy, that pure, unadulterated joy. But there's this whole other side to it. A massive, kind of complicated financial story that happens behind the scenes. So let's get into it and figure out what these champs are actually taking home. Because that's really the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, we're talking about a six-figure bonus, which is amazing. But the journey that money takes from the league's bank to the player's pocket, well, it's a long and winding road, and it's got some pretty surprising financial hurdles along the way. And this is where it all starts. Based on what we've seen lately, the 2025 MLB player bonus pool is estimated to be a staggering $130 million. That is the pot of gold at the end of the postseason rainbow. So where does a number that big even come from? Well, it's not like it just appears out of thin air from the league office. The players themselves actually help build this enormous bonus pool, and it all comes down to the fans in the stands. Okay, so check this out, because this is pretty cool. The entire pool is funded directly by ticket sales, the gate receipts, from specific postseason games. It starts with the wildcard games and goes all the way through the first 4 games of the World Series. So it's simple. The more packed the stadiums are, the bigger that prize pool gets. So we've got our $130 million pie. The next big question, of course, is how do you slice it up? For this, let's imagine a hypothetical 2025 World Series showdown between the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Toronto Blue Jays. And wow, this really shows you what a difference winning makes. As the champions, the Dodgers would snag the biggest piece, 36% of the whole pool, which works out to almost $47 million. The runners-up, the Blue Jays, still do really well, getting 24%, which is over $31 million. Now let's bring it down to what one player gets. The team actually votes on how to split up their share, but a full share for a player on the winning Dodgers is estimated to be around $500,000. For a Blue Jays player, it's about $350,000. I mean, that's life-changing money, for sure, but they do not get to keep all of it. Not even close. And this is where our whole story takes a very interesting turn, because every single one of these players, doesn't matter what team they're on, has to face a financial opponent that might be tougher than any pitcher they'll ever face: taxes, and one very specific tax in particular. It's called the jock tax, and what it means is that athletes have to pay income tax, not just where they live, but in every single city, state, or in this case, country, where they earn money playing their sport. You can imagine this makes for some insanely complicated tax returns. So how on earth do they figure all this out? Well, they use a system called duty days. They literally count the number of days they spend working in a specific location, let's say Canada for the World Series. Then they divide that by the total number of workdays in their whole season. That percentage is then applied to their huge annual salary, and that's the amount that becomes taxable in that other location. All right, now let's see how this actually plays out in the real world. Because this Dodgers-Blue Jays matchup creates a perfect, fascinating cross-border financial puzzle with 2 totally different tax situations. Okay, first up, the Dodgers player. He lives and works mostly in the US, and he's based in California, which already has high taxes. But because they played and won the World Series, he's just earned a nice chunk of his income up in Toronto, Canada. So stick with me here. Let's break down the math for a player making, say, $25 million a year. If he spends 14 duty days in Canada, that means almost 8% of his salary is now subject to Canadian tax. And with a combined federal and provincial rate of over 53%, that's over $1 million in taxes owed just to Canada. So what does all that do to his $500,000 bonus? Well, take a look at this. When you combine the U.S. federal tax, the California state tax, and all these other jock taxes, that glorious $500,000 check can shrink to less than $250,000. That's an effective tax rate of over 50%. Okay, now let's completely flip the script. What about the Blue Jays player? He's a Canadian resident, based out of Ontario, but he plays most of his games and earns most of his money down in the United States. His tax situation back home is pretty steep too. Canada has a highly progressive tax system, so between the federal and the Ontario provincial rates, he's looking at a combined rate of around 49% on that World Series bonus. And that's before you even factor in all the jock taxes he owes across the US. And yeah, this chart really puts it into perspective. that $350,000 runner-up bonus also takes a massive haircut. After all the accountants do their work, his estimated take-home pay from that bonus is right around $180,000. Once again, a huge chunk is gone, paid to taxes on both sides of the border. Now you're probably asking yourself, wait a minute, are they getting taxed twice on the exact same money? Thankfully, the answer is no. There's an international tax treaty that prevents that from happening. Basically, players get a credit in their home country for the taxes they paid in the foreign country. It stops double taxation, but it definitely doesn't lower their overall very high tax bill.
So after wading through all those numbers and tax codes, let's zoom back out. What is the real bottom line prize for winning it all?
All right, let's just do a quick recap of the big takeaways here. First, that huge prize pool comes straight from the fans buying tickets. Second, a player's full share bonus check looks incredible, but that's just the starting number. Third, this whole jock tax thing complicates everything, forcing players to file taxes all over the place. And the big one, a player's actual take-home pay from that championship bonus can easily be less than half of what they started with.
It really adds a whole new layer to that celebration, doesn't it? I mean, winning the World Series is always going to be about the glory, the ring, the spot in the history books. But you know what? It's also about a massive, super complicated payday that probably makes their accountant one of the most valuable players on the team.